Good afternoon, everyone. We are the researchers of the study entitled Effects of the Pandemic to the Tourism, Labor and Employment in the Selected Hotels in Calapan City.
Overview. Major sections of this research defense presentation. Introduction, statement of the problem, significance of the study, scope and limitation, literature review, theoretical framework, conceptual framework, research design, methods of data collection, research instrument and population and sample of the study.
First, let's proceed to the introduction. Pandemic has changed the way we live and certainly the way companies conduct their business. World and national health organizations, as well as health ministries, have been working to combat the global pandemic and protect people. Many limitations and guidelines have become normal in our lives. Tourism creates a lot of jobs, especially for women, youth, migrant workers, rural areas, and indigenous peoples, and it has a lot of connections with other industries. Government policy restricts travel and consumption by imposing social and physical barriers. As a result, it influences market transactions, such as restaurants, markets, retail malls, online transportation, and SMEs are among the several factors that have been impacted. Next is the statement of the problem. This study is sought to answer the following questions. First, how do policymakers begin to think beyond policies for the recovery and start on the task of building a future of work that is safer and more effective in cushioning the consequences of future crises on jobs and incomes? Second question, what is the basis of choosing selected employees during the pandemic? The third one, how do these changes in service affect the establishments and its employees? And the last question is, how did the establishment make assurance for those employees who are not able to work due to the health protocols? Go.
Next is the significance of the study. The result of this study would be beneficial to the following. First is employee. The result of this study will help their employees to be more aware of their skill and be able to move out of their comfort zone and will help them to know the job that is suitable to their skills and abilities. The next one is establishment and management. This study will improve the establishment management in the development of tourism labor. This study will foster secure ways of jobs and labor, following the mandate health protocols that will help visitors and the employee as well as to cope and adjust in the pandemic period. The third one is guests and visitors. The data will help the guests and visitors to make themselves secure and assured as they decide to be part of the said establishments. This will help them to feel that despite pandemic, they can still do the things that we used to do even if it's limited. Also, it will help them to better understand today's situation. And the fourth one is researchers. Data given will help the researchers to build positive interaction with the people in the tourism industry and will make them self-aware of today's situation and make them ready for their future involvement in tourism. For the last one is future researchers. The findings of the study will serve as a reference materials and guide for future researchers who wish to conduct studies similar on the topic on how the pandemic affects the tourism, labor, and employment in the selected establishment in Calapan City. For the scope and limitation of the study, highlight of this study is determine how pandemic affects the tourism, labor, and employment in the selected establishment in Calapan City. This is the requirement in our subject research. The concept of this study is to know the action taken by the chosen establishment about the employment of their employees during the pandemic. This study will help conducted in Calapan City. Gather a maximum of 10 establishments hotel in the quantitative part. Date that the researcher will conduct the survey is 2022. The personas of the study are the employer or manager of the chosen establishments. In these studies, there are possible variables that are connected to the titled effects of pandemic to the tourism, labor, and employment in the selected hotels in Calapan City. The different possible variables are fit, link, sacrifice, complex, unpredictable rules and principles. This study started in the year 2022 month of January.
Next is literature review. According to Sopronov 2018, tourism hospitality is one of the primary industries that has become significant in each country's economic growth from a global perspective. Next is, as stated by Thomson 2020, workers who have been unable to work due to self-isolation, family care, or physical limitations have gone underpaid, while freelancers who work from home are less likely to get infected. The amount of work available to them has decreased. Next is, furthermore, on both macro and levels, the pandemic has had an impact on global supply and demand. Businesses have been forced to close, and governments have implemented quarantines, curfews, and travel bans, putting the world in great lockdown that has damaged every industry. Next is, in addition to this, Kier et al. 2021 concluded that pandemic shocks have a deeply negative impact on tourism industry and economy.
Next is literature review studies. According to Nicola 2020, due to panic buying and hoarding of food supplies, the food industry is also seeing increasing demand. It summarized the socioeconomic repercussion of COVID-19 and specific elements of the global economy in response to this worldwide pandemic. As stated by Santos and Napi 2019, due to the nationwide lockdown, most hotel, restaurant, and transportation activities has been postponed. Furthermore, Uyghur and Akbi 2020 incidental impacts can also result from change in behavior, such as when people skip out on shopping or visitors avoid areas that look to be infected to avoid infection. Baum and Nguyen 2020 asserts that COVID-19 has produced conditions that have impact on the lives of all countries and individuals around the world, pushing societies to undergo unpredicted political, economic, and socio-behavioral transformation in the contemporary period. Next is theoretical framework. In a more recent study, Q.H. et al. Introduced a new job embeddedness theory which explained why people stayed in their jobs, argue that people with high level of pit, link, and sacrifice is- stay in their job longer, which affects employees' turnover. This concept was confirmed by other researchers such as Robinson's 2014 and was expanded into a new construct of job embeddedness with family. Philip H. Pan asserts that entrepreneurship theory is the formal study of itself emerging area in entrepreneurship research. Emergence is the spontaneous appearance of ordered social and organizational structures and process from seemingly random assortment of pre-existing conditions are governed by set of rules principles Pan 2004. Bucas and Siakas 2013 declares that Chow's theory recognized the complex and unpredictable or random dynamics of a system without assuming that they are inevitably random or disordered. It deals with systems that have many interactor agents and although hard to predict, these systems have structure. For the coronavirus pandemic, it implies that a small change of one parameter, length of lockdown, might create a very different outcomes of many variables that various effects that interact with each other to be taken into account. Bukas and Sikayas 2013.
Next is conceptual framework. For the conceptual framework on tourism employment during the COVID-19 pandemic, We have resulted to related our theories of this research, which are embeddedness theory, entrepreneurship theory, and case theory. And we will believe that this concept will help us to resolve we need.
Let's proceed to the research design. The researchers used the descriptive correlational design because this study is used to gather and evaluate data in order to see if two or more variables are linked. Helps to discover the factors that are related with each other by describing their relationship but does not necessarily suggest that these associations also a cause.
Next is methods of data collection. For the data collections methods, the researchers will use an interview guide which is quantitative questionnaire with 6 variables and 4 questions for each variable to arrive at the research study conclusions. Impact of the pandemic on labor and employment tourism in selected hotels in Calapan City. Thus, the responses of the respondents to the given questionnaire will be recorded, written, and calculated by the researchers. For the research instrument, the researchers use Likert scale for range for 4.51 to 5. The scale is 5. The description is strongly agree. The range is 3.51 and 450. The scale is 4. The description is agree. The range is 2.51 and 3.50. The scale is 3. Description is undecided or neutral. The range is 1.51 and 2.50. The scale is 3. Description is disagree. The range is 1 and 2.50. The scale is 1. Description is strongly agree.
For the population and sample of the study, the researchers will use the availability and sampling in the chosen establishments in Calapan City. To solve the number of respondents, the researchers use the Sloven's formula, which is n is equal to n over 1 plus ne squared, whereas n is for the number of samples, n is total population, and e is for error of margin e or margin of error. And that ends our presentation of our chapters 1 to 3.
This time, before we formally end, let me present to you our letter for our survey. Let me read the content. February 22, 2022. Marinel Supnet, MIHM, Tourism Management Program Head, City College of Calapan. Dear Mom, greeting obvious. We, the undersigned third-year tourism management student of the City College of Calapan, would like to request for your approval to conduct our survey to the 10 chosen hostels in Calapan City. This survey is in connection with our research study entitled Effects of Pandemic to the Tourism Labor and Employment in the Selected Hotels in Calapan City. This study is partial fulfillment of the requirements in research tourism management. Rest assured that the data to be gathered from the tourists will be used for educational purpose only and will be treated confidentially. We will appreciate the approval of this request. The members of the group are as follow: Binalao Maple Joy M, Moreno Karen, Orance Queenie C. Thank you and God bless. Signed by E&P Julie Pearl Ibrion, MAURP, our research advisor.
This time, let me present to you our sample of survey questionnaire. Good day. We are the third year tourism students from the City College of Calapan doing research titled Effects of the Pandemic to the Tourism, Labor and Employment in the Selected Hotels in Calapan City. In line with this, may we request for your time to answer our survey questionnaires? We have here a direction, which is please rate the following statements depending on your own perception, using the Likert scale: 5 for strongly agree, 4 for agree, 3 undecided or neutral, 2 for disagree, and 1 for strongly disagree. We have here 6 variables with 4 questions each. The first variable is fit, second variable is link, the third variable is sacrifice, The fourth one is rules and principle. Next is complex. And the last is the unpredictable. And that ends our presentation. Thank
Thank
you
you
and
and
God
God
bless.